everybody. Hello and welcome to Book Dawn, the show by the fans for the fans. I'm Rakisha fans. We're fans of books. From the moment Farooq and I could grab onto things when we were very little, we grabbed onto books and we've never let go. We love living in stories. We love living in the pages of books or electronic devices where we read them now, at least where I read them now. And I'm so happy that we have a very special guest with us tonight. And we're going to hang out and have a lot of fun and all his talk about his new book, the There Will Be Thousands. And Alexander Robb, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So let me do a little bit of homework before we get into it. Basically, we those of us who are watching us for a long time, we've been doing the show for at least 2 years. So we've recently shifted to our own YouTube channel. Let me bring that up. So if you're watching it from Facebook or if you're watching it from X, if you want to check out our regular show, please check out this particular web YouTube channel, which is basically Book Dawn. The address is very simple. I'll just bring it up. 1 second. There you go. YouTube.com/BookDawnOfficial. This is where we have all our weekly shows where Farooq and I talk about our favorite books. We have frequent guest appearances by booktubers in Bangladesh. And of course, like today, we have some very special people dropping in. We've had JCM Byrne, we've had Devon Erickson, and we've had Shami Stovall. Some very special authors, very talented authors with amazing books. They've dropped in. We've hung out. We've had a great time. And today, we're so happy that Alexander Rov has joined us, and you can catch us live right now. That's it. Homework is done. We can get back to our regularly scheduled program. Let me bring back the original thing back. There we go. There we are. So first of all, Alexander Robb, let me give our audience a background as to how I got to know about you and your book. So recently there was this 2 seconds of fame for me when I reviewed a highly controversial book on X, and a lot of people thought that was a very nice review, a fair review of that controversial book. And Alexander Robb was one of the first people to reach out to me that I really like your review, and would you please review my book? And that was a big, daunting moment for me, Alexander, because I've never had a bona fide author come and tell me, hey, would you check out my book and give a review? And I literally reached out to JCM Byrne because he's become my guide on X. So I reached out to JCM Byrne, the author of Wistful Ascending, and I'm like, there are some authors who are telling me, asking whether I would review their book. So how should I deal with this? Because this is something I've never done. I write reviews because I like writing reviews, right? There's no strings attached, and there's no pressure. So he told me, just do whatever you want. You're not beholden to anyone. If you want to review somebody's book, review it. If you don't want to, don't worry about it. So he very kindly reduced my panic, and then I went back to Alexander. It's like, as long as you don't mind about when the review comes out, as long as you're okay with my honest thoughts, I will definitely love to review your book. So this is how it began, Alexander. That's how my journey began. And something else you should know, I don't like living in grim, dark stories. I don't like, because life is grim, life is dark. You open the newspaper, you go to any social media, all you see is wars and people dying and people stealing and people being assholes. So I love noble bright stories, interesting stories, witty stories, etc. So when I saw your book cover, There Will Be Thousands. Let me bring that up 1 second. Just give me a second. So this is the cover of this fantastic book, There Will Be Thousands. So when I saw this one, yeah, okay, that looks pretty dark. And the name is, I love the name, by the way. There Will Be Thousands. I love the name. I love how it comes in the book contextually. So this is a very bold name, very grim cover of this weary warrior. And I was like, okay, so this looks like something out of Joe Abercrombie, etc., and his ilk. So I don't know how much I'm going to enjoy reading this, but since I've agreed to do it, and since Alexander was so nicely asked me to review it, so I got into it. And two things helped me. One was your fantastic writing, your storytelling, your writing. It just smoothed things out. Just it was like I had jumped into a stream, and the water was just carrying me along. And the second was the book wasn't very big. It's only, I think, 290 pages or something. It's not a very big book. So I finished it even before anything. I just finished this book, and then of course I had to tell my buddy Farooq Shams. I was like, you have to read this. This is amazing. And that's when I requested you, can you send us a copy, because he doesn't have access to Kindle. Nobody in Bangladesh has access to Kindle. And that's when you kindly gave us a copy, and he read it, and he told me this next day, dude, this book is fantastic. So Alexander, we are pretty old people. I think you're younger than us. I'm gonna be 50 next year. Farouk is gonna be 49 or 48 next year. What I mean to say is we've been reading books for a long, long, long time. From J.R.R. Tolkien to Robin Hobb to Joe Abercrombie to J.C.M. Byrne to Isaac Asimov to Enid Blyton to Tarzan to we've been reading our whole lives. So this book blew me away. It was completely out of the left field. Your prose, your writing style, your topic, your story, the way you kept it tight knit, small, and yet hinted at big things. It just blew me away. Farouk, it's your time to gush. Please do the gushing.
uh, okay, so sorry for those of you guys who've just tuned in. I had an asthma attack before I joined the show, so I'm on medication. Hopefully, I'll make it through the show. But Alex, one of the reasons I really wanted to join today is, first of all, thank you so much. You really went out of your way to ensure that I could have read your book, and I rarely do this. Shakib and I have known each other for ages. We're really good friends, but it's come out that I rarely thank the guy because who does? But this is one time, every once in a while, I find myself that I'm really grateful to him because he puts me in touch with all these little things that I fall in love with, and your book was definitely one of them. I think Shakib's touched upon everything that I would have said. For those of you who haven't read him, and I'm astonished that you don't have more books out there. It's a short read, but it is so gratifying. It is so fulfilling. You start off and you've created this universe. You pull people into this little world of yours, and the characters, the way the story flows, the twists that come in, these incredible plot twists that it's almost like I'm watching a movie, and it's one of those incredible movies where there are these twists that even though you've kind of seen it once, you go back and watch the movie all over again because that movie was so spectacular. The storytelling was so incredible, and your book is exactly that. While I was reading, the books I love are the ones that I get to kind of visualize in my head, and all the moments, all the characters. And there are so many questions. Last night, Shakib and I were supposed to touch base on, okay, we're going to meet this guy. What kind of questions should we ask him? And I just had so many questions in my head that I was supposed to send him the questions. And I was like, you know what? It's just not going to happen because there are so many questions I have because you have such rich characters. Where did these characters come from? Where did you get these plot twists from? And till the very end, there's this little bit that happens at the very end. There's a letter that comes to one of the characters, the main character, and you kind of end it over there. So it's this incredible book that ends, and it ends on a fulfilling note, but it's got that grandness of it's kind of teasing me as well, that I'm hoping that this isn't the end. I know that there should be more, and it's been driving me insane the whole day. I've been at work, and the whole day I've been thinking that, okay, the first question when I see you is going to be, okay, so what's coming next? This book, Shakib's gushed on it, and I know that we'll be gushing a lot more. We'll be talking about this book, but please tell me what's following up on this book. There will be thousands. I hope that's kind of a reference of the thousands and thousands of pages that are going to follow this one. So what's the follow up to this?
So, without giving away too many details, I initially wrote this to be a standalone. I was inspired by quite a few things. It's kind of an amalgamation that has come together over time. But the second one, I'm planning on writing that probably within the next 2 years. I've got a few other projects that I've got going on right now. But the next one will be called There Will Be Dozens, if I'm able to write a sequel. And then the third one will be called There Will Be One. And so it's just
Oh, nice.
decrease. I'm still working on kind of like the plot line for those two. I have a vague outline of what I want to do with those, but it is in the works. Hopefully, it will be published sometime within the next 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
Fantastic,
All right.
fantastic. So when you started writing, did you have this whole like trilogy plotted out, or did the trilogy idea come after you finished the first book?
The trilogy idea kind of came. I'm midway through it. And you guys have read it, so you know kind of some of the plot twists. But without giving too much away, it has to deal with why the royals are counted by the Fielians, why they are so strict about their census.
Oh, okay.
Because there's a reason for that that isn't discussed in this book at all. You just know that the Fielians really, really care about their population census. And so, as I was writing, I kind of had this idea of like, I know why they do this, but I should maybe explore this in a sequel. And this book is a little bit different than what I normally write. So I have two other books published, Everfont and When the King Was Born, and then I have a fourth one coming out later this year called The Land of the Ill-Imagined. And for each of those, I've had a very definite, this is how it's going to begin, this is how it's going to end, and then this is kind of what's in the middle. This one, I just had the idea of what I wanted to see. I started with the idea of there's going to be this slaver, he's going to become a slave, and I would like it to be a tale of redemption. And so I really just discovered the book as I went along, which is not normally how I do things.
Okay, so you actually started with the idea that I'm going to write about a slaver who becomes a slave. That's what you started with.
Yep, that's where the whole idea came from. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the U.S. Kind of political discourse, but right now in the political discourse, slavery is considered this ultimate evil, and
Mm.
I think it is evil. But I kind of got thinking, I was like, what if there were a slaver who were redeemed, and could he find redemption? Would people be able to empathize with that character? And so I started out the book intentionally dark, and I was actually really worried about it because it starts out with Sitter and the rest of his bandits killing a family,
Yeah.
enslaving the women, and you're just thrown into it. And so I was like, if people read this book, if they can get past like the first chapter, kind of like this dark sensation, I think they'll really enjoy it because even though it is grim dark, it is kind of upward from there. I enjoy grimdark, but I love happy endings. So I like when it's you start out in a dark place and move towards the light, and that's what I really wanted this book to encapsulate: is that if somebody really wants to find redemption, that they can.
That's fantastic. And in fact, now that you point out, it did start very dark, but what kept me going was the fact that your writing style, not just the story itself, your writing style is very fluid, it's very evocative. And you're somebody who you wrote a very concise story. I think Farooq had a question. Farooq, you were asking that it's a very you did the world building very meticulously, but you there was a very fine line between providing enough detail to immerse readers without overwhelming them, because if you because I pointed out it's not a very big book,
Yeah.
it's 290 pages or 250 pages, something like that. So I never felt that there wasn't enough information, but at the same time I love the fact that you threw me into the story from the beginning. There was no prologue, there was nothing. Here's Sitter with his band of thieves and cutthroats, and this is what they're doing, and then you follow them and you follow him, right? I really love that, and the fact that you introduce us to characters like, I think her name is Ophelia, the spider, the female spider. So, first of all, you never really described her 100%. I don't remember you describing her 100% beyond saying that she's a spider. So, I kind of imagine what she looked like. So, where she comes from, why is she here? There was never any, and we never really got into it. Then there are very four interesting characters who work in the kitchen of Ophelia's manor, like they're the slaves, right? So we never really get big backstories about them. Then there's the captain of the guards. We never really got a big backstory when we first met him. So I love the fact that you introduce all these characters, and on the go we're learning about them without these backstories, and you continuously hint at slightly larger things that are beyond the pages. I thought you handled that wonderfully. So how did this come to you that, okay, I'm going to write this book specifically in this manner, where I keep hinting, where I keep teasing, but I don't really reveal a lot. I don't write a lot of backstories and a lot of other things. Was that a conscious choice, or is that your writing style?
That was definitely a conscious choice. So I tend to kind of be long-winded in my descriptions. Everfont and When the King was Born are pretty good examples of that. But one of my favorite fantasy authors of all time is Glenn Cook, and he's written a book series called The Black Company.
Yep, Black Company.
Just wonderful. I love how it's written. The first time I read it, I could not get into it. It was so different than anything I'd read, and because it kind of is that similar. It doesn't give you any detail. It doesn't give you any backstory. And I had read that one. I've reread it probably 2 or 3 times now, and I had just reread that one, and I went into Emperor's Soul by Brandon Sanderson, and that one has a ton of emotional gut punches in it, and I love that. And so I wanted to see if I could write something that was kind of similar in size to Brandon Sanderson's Emperor's Soul, while having the prose of Glenn Cook's Black Company. And so that was where the inspiration for this came from. It's not AI written. I just have to clarify. There's a huge debate about that right now. If you choose to write with AI, it's whatever. But I myself don't. But that's where the inspiration for this came from. Is I wanted to mimic Glenn Cook's style. I feel like I did okay, but I wasn't able to get quite there. But I feel like it's a nice tribute to him and what he's done.
Farooq, have you read any Glenn Cook?
I can't remember right now. No.
Black Company. I think I read one of his books, but I don't. I think I read it out of order or something. So I didn't enjoy it much. So I can tell you, you write better than him, according to me. So that's fine.
Well, thank you.
Because I literally can't get over the fact that your writing style was so fantastic. I just finished reading Robin Hobb's The Farseer trilogy, the first three books, and that's very, very, very grim dark. It's probably one of the prototype grim dark series out there. But the reason I kept reading it was because she's got a fantastic writing style, and I found a lot of similarities between how she writes and how you write, and she's like top of her class the way she writes. But I found a lot of similarities, but which is what kept me going. So um, we heard about things that you plan and whatnot. You were talking about your other two books. So your first book, we're gonna jump around a bit. So the first book came out. It was this one, right? Let me just bring up the
Everfont?
Everfont. This was your first book.
Yep, that
So
was
can you
my
tell us a little bit about
first
this?
book. Awesome, yeah, for sure. So Everfont was written in the summer of 2020, actually, during COVID. I was a pest control salesman and figured out pretty quickly I absolutely hated pest control. So I would get my one sale for the day and then hurry home as fast as I could to write this. This is actually the fourth book that I wrote. My
Oh,
first three were not great. My first book was 200,000 words. For reference, There Will Be Thousands is about 55,000. So it's 4 times the size. I describe it as absolute dog water. It's absolute trash. But finishing that first book gave me the motivation to be like, I can do this. I can write books. And so I wrote three more books, one after the other, and Everfont was the best of those three. And it's kind of the one that started my journey. I published this through a small press called We Do Publishing that is located in Salt Lake, Utah. It has done all right. I think I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of its history and my hopefully to be long repertoire of books. But it's somewhat average. Unfortunately, and you can definitely tell when you read it that this is definitely a first debut book. But it kind of shows the growth that I've had and as an author, in my opinion, that I've gone from this to There Will Be Thousands. Because as soon as There Will Be Thousands was done, I was like, I'm pretty sure this is the best thing that I've written thus far.
so you wrote this, and then you wrote this one came out. The King Was Born. So it's in the same universe as the first one, but is this a direct sequel or is this standalone?
So this is a prequel to Everfont. So in Everfont, the premise is that the main character Ryan, she's a girl who lives on a desert planet called Grit, and the world is dying, essentially, and nobody knows why. It's becoming desert, and the desert encroaches on civilization more and more each year. So much so that there's only one city left called Everfont. And so Ryan is trying to save up enough money to take her sister through a magic portal. They're called funnels to a different world. And as she's doing this, some hiccups occur. So she's what's called an imperial. She has magic, and the king has pretty much outlawed all magic. And his personal assassin, the Seeker, is hunting down everybody that can use magic. And so that's the plot line of Everfont. When the king was born, it kind of discusses how the king got to where he was, what made him hate Imperials and magic so much, and it also deals with why the world is turning into a desert. And I have a third book planned for this. I'm hoping to release it next year. The title is tentatively called An End to Stars. And it will wrap up the plot lines that were introduced in Everfont and also the tie-ups of loose ends that were left in When the King Was Born.
So I'm going to jump in with this one question. Shakib asked this question a little bit, but I wanted to know a little bit more about it. You did describe little bits and pieces, like, for example, regarding the spider Ophelia. There is this one very short part where she kind of narrates where she came from, why she is the way she is, and then something tragic happens or whatever. But it's fascinating because, you know, you created these heartbreaking, dramatic moments. And there's supposed to be, you know, there's supposed to be violence for the sake of violence. It's supposed to be like the way even I had imagined it, that, you know, with this character, it would be something ugly and something ferocious. But somehow you've taken all these sequences and you've kind of put this sense of, there's a sense of romance. I mean, at the end of the day, I was expecting a huge, big fantasy, epic fantasy with wars and conquests. And at the end of it, when I finished the book, I was like, you know what? This is a great romance. This is a great love story at the end of the day. So how did you manage to merge it all together? I mean, there are multiple themes. And it was like, and that's one of the reasons why I love the book. Because at the beginning, it's an epic fantasy, and then it floats down to, okay, there's something which is a mystery, there is some sort of conspiracy happening, and then there's a rebellion, and no, oh wow, it's a love story. And then there is supposedly an ending, and then it keeps on going. So how did you said that you went, you know, as it came, but you know it just sounds like so complicated, but you've written it so smoothly. How did you do that? I mean, were there rewrites? Did you write it once and then go back and write it a couple of other times? How did you fit all of this and make it come together so smoothly?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty great question. Neil Gaiman, even though he's currently disgraced, has a really good quote. He says, the first draft is for just getting it on paper. The second draft is for making it look like you knew what you were doing the first time. And I live by that quote. When I'm writing, I will do a first draft. And as I'm writing, typically I'll have things planned out. But if something comes up that you're not expecting, you're like, oh, this would be a really great plot twist or an addition to the character. I will then continue writing as if I'd already made that change prior. And then in my second draft, I will go back and change everything so it fits that. A really good example of this is Monger. He was not initially in his role. He was kind of meant to, he's kind of meant to be Vagar's role. He's meant to be the antagonist. And pretty quickly on, I realized like I didn't want him to fit that. And so I wrote as if I had already changed the beginning. He was a lot more crass, a lot more violent when you first meet him in the first draft. And I changed that. So there's still that kind of anger there when he first meets Sitter, but he becomes more soft. And so that's an example of one thing that I was like, this isn't really working. I'm going to change this in future drafts.
Okay. Chucky can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
So, you have published 3 books, or you have published more books than these?
So 3 books, and then I have a 4th one on the way in October. So it actually has to somewhat is related to There Will Be Thousands tangentially. So I am currently signed with a publisher. They're going to be releasing my book, and it was originally slated for June of 2025. However, they called me in April of this year, and they essentially said, hey, we're not going to be able to publish your book. We don't have the funds for it right now. We're relying on our backlog. And I was devastated because I'm very excited for this upcoming book. And so I took about a week and was like, what do I do? And I was like, well, I have been sitting on There Will Be Thousands for about a year now, because I wrote it from June of 2024 to I want to say August, October, somewhere around there. It was a very quick turnaround time, and I had submitted it to this publisher, so I was just waiting to hear back from them. And so I was like, well, if they're not going to release this other book, and There Will Be Thousands is already done, I've already commissioned the cover art for it, then I'm just going to release this right now. And so, because that other book has now been pushed back to October, it's releasing tentatively around that time. Hopefully, we stick with that release date. I was able to push There Will Be Thousands forward. But roundabout way to answer your question, yes, I do have another book coming out. It's called The Land of the Ill-Imagined. The premise is that if you've ever had a thought or an idea for an invention or a story or a character, and you've never told anybody about that thought, those thoughts end up in a place called the Land of the Ill-Imagined. They're aware that they are called thoughtlings, and they exist in this state of like half creation. And it deals with this one thoughtling who gets there. He kind of struggles to realize that he's just an abstract creation from somebody that actually is real. And they have this whole society of other thoughtlings and he gets kind of thrown into the world there. So I'm very excited for that one. If you guys would like, I can send you an ARC review of that, or an ARC copy, once I have those available as well, if it's
Yeah,
something you're interested in.
no, that would be awesome. I'm definitely interested. I'd like to check it out. So you said something interesting. So you started writing it June 2024, and you finished it in October. So that's June, July, August, September. So it's like 5 months. So it took you just 5 months to write this book.
Yes, there was a little bit of editing afterwards. So, but within that 5 months, I did about 3 drafts, and then did a little bit of editing afterwards. But it was mostly complete within that time.
So is that your usual timeline? Like you write a book, you finish it within 5 6 months, or this was special?
This one was special. It normally takes me a little bit longer. This one, I felt inspired to do. Everfont took me. Everfont was the same. It took me a few more months for Everfont. I think about 2 more months. But when The King Was Born, took me about a year and a half. And then a few other books that I've written that I have not published. It's taken me about a year for each one. So there Will Be Thousands was very unusual in how quickly I put it out. It's actually funny. I posted on Twitter because I've been trying to aggressively market on Twitter, like, "Hey, you should read my book." Very similar to how you and I met. And somebody in one point I wrote this from June of 2024 to October, and they were like, "Oh, you wrote it so fast. I'm sure it's like quality or whatever." And I was like, "Well, I can understand that. So, but you should read it to find out."
No, so
So,
so are you a full time writer or do you have a day job?
I have a day job. I work for a solar panel company. I'm a warehouse manager. And so I write on the side. I try to I subscribe to the Stephen King method of writing, is that you have to write every day. And so I have a minimum word goal of about 1,000 words. I try to hit about 2,000 to 3,000 every single day. It can be hard. I'm also married. I have 3 kids. And so finding time to write can sometimes be difficult, but I feel that if you really have that passion as a writer, if this is something that you really want to do, anybody can do it as long as you set aside the time.
so what inspires you? Because you said that you were inspired while you were doing something, and it inspired you to do this. So, what generally inspires you with these stories? How do these ideas hit you? When? Where?
For There Will Be Thousands, it was a mix of things. So I think the Christian song "Amazing Grace," written by a slaver after he was shipwrecked, I think that played a part. The general aesthetic and theming, Glenn Cook's The Black Company, Brandon Sanderson's The Emperor's Soul. More of the prose from Glenn Cook, more of the emotional beats from The Emperor's Soul from Brandon Sanderson, but also the video game Elden Ring. I don't know if either of you have heard of that, but the
Yeah, yeah.
storytelling yeah, it's I consider it a masterpiece. I think it's fantastic. But one of the things about that game is that the storytelling is not, you have to search for it. And so I wanted to kind of do something similar where the story, you were given a bare bones story through prose, and then you can kind of speculate on what else is kind of going on behind the scenes.
So did you always know you wanted to be a writer, or was it something that suddenly occurred to you? Like when did it start? What were what was your inspiring? What was the inciting incident that okay, I'm going to be a writer? Can you just take us through that?
Uh, I have known since I was very young. So I actually taught myself how to read at 5 or 6 years old. I was at my cousin's house and he was playing Pokemon Silver. And I went to my dad and I said, I would like to play that. And he says, you can't read. You're not old enough. Maybe when you're 9 or 10. And I was like, I'm going to prove you wrong. And so I taught myself to read over that next year. And in that process, I discovered I loved books. But I would say the inciting incident for me when I really was like, I want to be an author is there's an author called Kenneth Opel or Opel. He's written a series called the Silverwing series, and it's for children. It follows some bats that get into some trouble. But spoiler alert for the third book, the main character at the end ends up sacrificing his life for his son. And I think I was about 8 or 9 when I read that, and I was a little bit of a sensitive kid. I still am in some respects, but I just remember bawling and crying that this character that I had loved had died, and he'd done it for his son. And that was the moment when I decided I want to write books that make people feel this way, like maybe not cry, but may make people emotional. And so I have been working towards that ever since, essentially.
Okay.
Fantastic. Farooq, I interrupted you. Tu bol.
No, no, no. Because there seem to be hints of your background in the storytelling, and I'm going by just the one book that I've read, but it's such a fascinating read because starting from the names of the locations, the characters, they're all 7 feet tall, or they're extremely, they've got red hair or silver hair. So, was there a particular ethnicity that was inspiring you to think this way? Because I got a whole Viking feel in terms of certain, when you hear the names and you hear the myths and the legends, and they have this whole thing of, the olden, our ways, the original ways, or something, the ancient ways. They keep on referring to this. So, were there inspirations for these little points as well?
Yeah, so the naming conventions are definitely Norse or Viking inspired. For all of those, everybody coming from Fiel, pretty much I went to Google. I was like, what is a Norse name that would fit here? And I actually looked up quite a few of them. I went through quite a few lists trying to find the right ones. I think Vagar. I got the name from a game called League of Legends. There's a character there called Vigar, and I changed it a little, and I almost changed it again when I found out that House of the Dragon has a dragon named Vagar as
There
well.
you are.
And so, but it just fit him so well that I kept it. But definitely Viking Norse inspired. One of the reasons I don't do a lot of descriptions aside from maybe hair or a few clothing is I want people to picture the characters how they want to picture them. So to me, like I picture Vagar, Sitter, most of the bandits, they're probably white. But if somebody wanted to picture them as a different ethnicity, like a different skin tone, that doesn't bother me. And because I remember there was a book I was reading, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but they described the character and I had this picture in my head. And then when they released official character art for it, I was like, that's not what I pictured at all. And so I love hearing people describe to me how they pictured my characters because I'm like, yeah, that's your interpretation. Once you've read it, I feel like that character is unique to you in some respects.
Okay. All right.
So now that you've already said that your writing style was a little different when you wrote Everfont and the other book, um, and this is where you took some conscious decisions that this is how I'm going to write this book. So is this now going to be your new style going forward for most of your books, or is this something that you want to set aside for this particular series? There will be thousands.
I think for the Everfont series and for a few other ones I write, I'm not going to adopt this writing style. I think because Everfont already has 2 books published in it, that it would be jarring to switch my writing style for the third one. You can always improve. You can always do better prose. So I think that in that respect, I'll just improve or try to improve the prose, the pacing for those books. For the Land of the Ill-Imagined, it's also a little bit of a different writing style. Not similar to Everfont or There Will Be Thousands. And I have 5 books planned for that particular series, so I think I'm going to stick with the writing style for that one. But I would definitely love to books that I haven't written or haven't published yet. I definitely like to adapt those for this writing style because I loved writing this way. It's a bit of an exercise for me because it forces me to be like, okay, I've said too much here. What can I cut and still communicate to the reader what needs to be communicated? But I think that's good. It forces me to think instead of just writing things for the sake of writing, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. You were mentioning that you and Brandon Sanderson, you guys live in the same state, Utah. So, Sanderson, I don't know how big a fan you are of Sanderson. I'm a huge fan of Brandon Sanderson, and it's interesting. I first read his book Elantris way back, I think, in the early 2000s when it first came out. Somebody recommended it to me. I bought it. I read it. I didn't leave an impact. It just didn't leave an impact. And then I forgot all about Brandon Sanderson. I went about my life, read other stuff. And then I think 3 years ago or 4 years ago, somehow I think because of social media or whatever, I got in touch back in touch with the name Brandon Sanderson, and I was seeing. I think it was after the explosion of Wheel of Time. He wrote the 3 books and all of that, so that kind of put him into social media, into the world media back again. And somehow I got interested, and I saw people I respect telling me that you should check out Brandon Sanderson. So I went back and I reread The Elantris, and this time I really enjoyed it. And then I remembered why the first time I had it, because when I first read it, so this is I was very young then. When I first read, I was like 24 years old, 25 years old. So in my mind, fantasy books was basically a version of Lord of the Rings, where you have this band of adventurers and you journey from point A to B. There's this big baddie you have to fight at the end, etc., etc., etc. And Elantris was nothing like that. So it just didn't vibe with me back then. But after 10, 12 years, I'd matured enough, I read different enough books that I was ready for it. I guess the only way to say it. And then, of course, I took a deep dive. I read the entire Mistborn series. I finished reading the Cosmere. I always forget the series' name. The Wind and Truth
Stormlight
series,
Archives.
Stormlight Archives. Yes. So I finished the entire Stormlight Archives, and this guy is another guy who's his writing style is so electric. It's so magnetic. It's so fluid. I know people complain about some of these books are too big. I also feel some of them are too big, but I never feel that when I'm reading it. I never feel it's after I finished reading. I was like, wow, that's a lot of pages I've read, and I loved it. So what's your takeaway, or are you a fan of Brandon Sanderson? What do you think about this guy and his writing style?
I love Brandon Sanderson, so I huge fan of his Cosmere. I started with Mistborn way back. I want to say in 2014, 2015. I read the whole trilogy. I think in a month. So pretty quickly, it is actually my second favorite trilogy of all time. Almost equal to Lord of the Rings by J.R. Tolkien. Those are my 2 favorites. But it's interesting to see how he has also progressed as an author. Elantris was a great debut novel, I feel like. But if you read Elantris today as compared to his later books, you can definitely tell how he has grown more skillful in his prose, in his plotting, and just keeping the audience engaged. When I read Elantris the first time, I felt very similarly to you in that Elantris has a really hard time keeping your attention for I think like the first half of the book,
Yeah, yeah.
and then yeah, and it's all set up, which is fine. And then the second half it accelerates faster and faster until you get to I think it's colloquially known as the Sander Lanch, where everything just happens at once. And in his later books, he does a lot better job at keeping your attention. I think the best book that he's written, in my opinion, is The Bands of Mourning, the third book in the
Mistborn.
Wax and Wane.
Oh,
Um,
Wax and Wine. Okay.
yeah, and I love Mistborn. It's my favorite trilogy that he's written. My favorite of his books. I do think that Bands of Mourning stands head and shoulders above the rest, though, even of his Stormlight Archive books.
Okay.
Um, I did not. I hope Sanderson doesn't watch this. I didn't really enjoy Rhythm of War or Wind of Truth that much, or Wind and Truth. I feel like they were a step down from what he has previously done, but I have a lot of faith in him. He is extraordinarily more talented and experienced than I am, so I'm looking forward to what he releases next.
No, I think Rhythm of War. I don't know, Farooq, you've read that one. Rhythm. I'm not going to give anything away. Don't worry. Rhythm of War. I think it was a step down because all that drama with the Parshendi and their history, it came, I think, a little too late. By the time I'd gotten into Rhythm of War, I wanted to move forward, and it kept dragging me back to people and places and things that just was not interesting for me. And I found out later that it was interesting for most people. What I loved in Rhythm of War was the ascension of Navani. That's all I'll say for people who haven't read it. The way she comes into her own, that's something. I was talking about it with somebody that Rhythm of War is probably the weakest of all the. Sorry, what was the series called again? Why do I keep forgetting the name?
Uh, no worries.
Stormlight,
Stormlight
Stormlight,
Archive.
Stormlight Archives. I so it's probably the weakest book in Stormlight Archives, but it's got one of the. There's a very simple line there where Navani says, "Journey before
Yeah.
destination, you bastard." That's my favorite line because of the context in the entire Stormlight Archives. That's my favorite line because of the context and because of who said it. So even that has my favorite line. And Wind and Truth, I was disappointed by. I won't use the word disappointed. I didn't like the way it ended, but then I've told myself exactly what you said. Can we call you Alex or is it Alexander all the time?
Alex is fine. So
Okay, because when Farouk called you Alex, I panicked for a moment. Did we just insult him or not? So I didn't know.
no worries. So
So so I was like, okay, fine. So this is how you've chosen to end Wind and Truth, and I think it does go into a little bit of young adult territory with feelings and emotions and whatnot. Other than that, I was like, okay, I trust this guy. He claims. I just saw a recent interview. He's like, yeah, I know what people didn't like. I know what they liked. I just want to request people, tell people that please have faith in me. I know what I'm doing. So I'm hoping that this is a midway in the journey of the Stormlight Archives, and he knows what he's doing, and we'll get amazing books in the future. Absolutely, I have full faith on him. Regarding your favorite book, Bands of Mourning, is that the Wax and Wayne first trilogy or the second trilogy?
that is the so that's the second Mistborn trilogy. That's the one where they Wax. It's the book starts out with Wayne dropping a water tower on Wax's wedding, and they find out that the bands of mourning, which are these unkeyed copper mines, have been photographed, and so Wax, Wayne, Steris, Marassi, and then Milan all head north to go find these in the mountains. And I think it's Brandon Sanderson's best book. I could gush about it all day, but I think the my favorite part is the scene where he spoiler alert. I'll keep it vague, but he has that conversation with Harmony at the end. It's a really powerful moment in the series. I would say that it's very similar to when Kaladin has his conversation with Tien in Rhythm of War, when Dalinar is standing against Odium in Oathbringer at the very end. I just think it's a little bit better than all the other ones. Also, the character development of Steris, where she was super annoying in book one. She was kind of
Yeah.
like the obstacle to Marassi
Hmm.
because you want Wax to end up with Marassi. I probably saying her name wrong, but that's how I pronounce it. But then her growth as a character in the way Sanderson makes you feel you kind of sympathize with her at first, and then you empathize, and you just fall in love with her character over the course of the series. So that's kind of why I consider that to be his best work. I know a lot of people will disagree with me. I think that Words of Radiance in the Stormlight Archive, the second Stormlight book, is probably a lot of people would probably consider that his best book so far. But
I
um,
I think if we're talking about completed works, then my favorite Brandon Sanderson is the first Mistborn trilogy. If we're talking about like
yeah,
complete stories, right? So the reason why I'm not like, of course, I finished the Wax and Wayne books and everything. The reason why it never really hooked me like the way they hooked you, and I love the fact that art is so subjective and we all have our own likes and dislikes. So I love the fact that you love this particular book so much. The reason why I always had a problem with the Wax and Wayne series because I think the lead character is Wax, the
yes,
gun toting hero. I felt like he was always a little too stiff, and Sanderson never really developed him. Like even Wayne was more developed than Wax, and that's something that bothered me throughout. I was like, we need to develop. You need to develop this guy a little bit more. He's too much of a cartoon character or a one-sided, one-dimensional character. That's what I felt, which is why I never really got really into the Wax and Wayne series. But the stories are obviously a lot of fun, and I totally respect your opinion, 100%. But what would you say to that? To this criticism that Wax is not maybe a fully developed character? Do you disagree, or what do you think?
No, I think that's a fair criticism. I would say that I agree with that to a certain extent. In the first book, him and Wayne are definitely like kind of more caricatures than they are actually characters, and they develop more. Sanderson gives them a lot of growth throughout the rest of the series. Wayne gets a ton because he's a fan favorite, and he's kind of the comedian. He goes from the comedian almost to the hero at the very end, whereas Wax is kind of inhibited. He's kind of inhibited by main character syndrome, as what I like to call it. I really struggled with this principle when writing Everfont, is that every character around my main character was more interesting than my main character because my main character had this role to fill, and I have worked around that in the third book that I'm currently writing. But Ryan really suffers for it in that book. And I feel like Wax does similarly. He has some things that kind of help him break out of that mold over the course of the series, such as his relationship with Lessie in book one and book two, and his relationship with Steris, and then this back and forth he has with Harmony. But I think that is a fair criticism. When I read the Wax and Wayne series and Oathbringer from Stormlight Archive, Dalinar and Wax are actually very similar for me. I picture them almost the same with very, very few differences between the two because they kind of are the same character in a way. And I hope that I don't get like pilloried for that on the internet. So,
No, no, no. Why would you? Because I never thought of it that way. To me, they're very different. But that's very interesting. This main character syndrome. Because now that you pointed out, Superman, the character suffers from that. Like most writers don't know how to write him. Then there's even like Harry Potter. Yes, I know J.K. Rowling is a controversial character, but her books are fucking amazing. So
yeah.
Harry Potter suffers from me. I think he also suffers from main character syndrome. It's just that she writes him so well. She writes the story so well. We don't never really get affected by it. Um, but that's something you managed to avoid. You managed to avoid by making your hero in There Will Be Thousands into not a main character in the sense that he's a very, very dastardly person. So that
Yeah.
immediately frees you up from putting him in one slot, right? So was that
Yeah.
also one of the reasons why you chose to make him such a dastardly character that it would give you more things to play with?
That was, yeah. He says and does a lot of things that I would never in my wildest dreams think of doing or saying. And I actually, when I was writing Sitter, I was kind of like, okay, if we were to take this in a grand scale, it would probably be Monger or Chief who are the main characters of this story in a grand fantasy epic. But Sitter is more of a side character, and I think that's why he works so well, is because he's just kind of one of those characters that influences thing kind of from the vanguard, as he says early on in the book. But I definitely did. That was something I wanted to overcome with this book. Is I want my main character to be interesting. I don't want him to be kind of lackluster like I've struggled with in the past.
So
It's
this is something.
definitely
Go
it's
go.
definitely the only grimdark story I've seen where the villain halfway through you realize that because usually grimdark characters are the evil characters, the anti-heroes, and they kind of spend the entire story being themselves. I mean, I think I just finished off the Prince of Thorn, King of Thorns, and the Emperor of Thorn series, and Mark Lawrence does that to his central character. Starts off as, okay, I've got no soul, I've got no conscience, and he keeps on doing what he does because it's just what he wants to do. Yours is the first time where halfway through the book, it kind of just, it's one of those amazing twists. And then I don't think I've ever seen anything happen like that with a truly grimdark novel, where halfway through I was confused. I was like, okay, it's supposed to be grimdark, but it actually, when you look at it, I don't even know. Did you really, really want to write a grimdark and then put that twist in, or was it just something that you figured out that? it's what your story needed. Because either way, it's fantastic. What you did was fantastic, but did you start off thinking that I'm going to have an evil character, and then the twist hit you, and then you thought that was a better plot device?
I started out with the evil character. I always wanted him to be redeemed, but something I really struggled with is how to get him there. Because characters, sometimes something that happens with books and movies and video games is that characters will do about faces, where they are one character on one page and then immediately they transform into something else. And so I really struggled with making his progress gradual while still keeping him kind of this deplorable character in a way. And his relationship with the other slaves is really pivotal to that because he starts to work with them, and also the fact that he has that past that he has a line where he talks to Sundu at some point in the story, and he asks her, he's like, "When you were little, did you want to be a slave?" And she
Mm.
says no, and he says, "Well, do you think that people grow up wanting to be slavers?" And it kind of gives you this hint that this isn't like, and there are hints scattered throughout the book. This isn't the lifestyle he wants. It's the lifestyle that he feels he has to live. And so there's kind of always that he wants to be redeemed. He doesn't want to be doing this, but he doesn't see a way out. And his relationship with these other slaves gives him that way out. It gives him a moment to see that he's finally made a correct choice. I've been going through and editing it because there's a few punctuation errors in the book, but there's also a line where he talks to Ophelia, and Ophelia is saying, "We could never be redeemed. We're always going to be
Yeah.
evil. We're essentially going to hell." And he says, "I know that, but wouldn't you like to make the right choice at least once in
Before,
your
yeah.
life?" Yeah, and so it's that gradual, like he doesn't feel like he can redeem, but he wants to be, and I feel like that's pivotal to a lot of pivotal to his character and something that is not found in a lot of other grimdark characters. I recently read Red Rising by John. I think it's John Pierce Brown. I could be getting his name wrong,
That's
but his
correct.
character, yeah, his wife dies on early on, and so he goes on this spiral throughout the um, story, and he's got a lot of redeeming characteristics about him, but he also kind of is like not redeemed until like the very end, I feel. And the same with Darrow and Prince of Thorns. I think you were mentioning that,
Yeah.
Farouk. I had a really hard time reading that book because I was like, I don't feel like Darrow has anything about him that I can root for. Like, he's on this journey of revenge, which is understandable, but I have a hard time reading him because I'm like, I want something to empathize with this character on both sides, like hate and anger. And when he kills his, I forget because it's been a while since I read it, but he kills a character later on in the first book that was my favorite character, and I was like, oh, that's so rough. So, but I wanted Sitter to be different from those characters. I wanted him to have some redeemable qualities that are just buried in his psyche.
Okay,
No, I
because
tried reading. Sorry, ball, ball, ball.
no, because towards the end of your book, it's all about redemption. That's like the biggest driving theme there is at the end. So at least for me, it was like a very big thing. And once again, I know I keep on repeating myself, but the way you just brought it in with, despite the fact that you changed the theme and you brought in a different point, and you still managed to pull it all back in. So great writing there. Shakib, sorry, you were saying something.
No, no. So we've gushed enough. So I think it's time for some hard questions. Alex, hope you're ready for them. So you brought
All
it up.
right.
I had actually forgotten about to talk about it, but you brought it up. So yes, I started my written review of your book with the fact that more than two punctuation or grammatical mistakes as I'm reading a book is too many for me personally. So can you? So you are an indie author, so you don't have a lot of support. You don't have these traditional publishing houses doing your editing for you. So these are all things that you have to do. Can you take us through the process? Because a lot of people in Bangladesh, they don't know how you guys do this. So what is the process that you follow for an indie author to get these books published? And where do these mistakes creep in? Like, it's such a great book, which is why especially it bothered me, those little mistakes, punctuation, grammatical. I'm like, why is this here? This is such a great book. So what's the process that happens and where do these creep in?
Yeah, of course. With any book that you write, there's going to be errors in it, and when you have multiple sets of eyes on it, it makes it easier to find those. I did not have an editor for this book. I wrote it and edited it myself.
Oh wow,
Um, thank you.
that's huge.
Yeah, thank you. I do have a hard time though when I'm reading on a computer. It's really hard for me to catch errors. I don't know why that is. I do a lot better when I have a physical copy. However, when I was writing this, let me back up a second. Let me take you through the process so I can better explain this. So when I write a book, I will write the entire manuscript before I think about cover art, before I think about marketing, before I think about publishing it. And then once I finish the first draft of the manuscript, then I will think about cover art. So I finished There Will Be Thousands, and there's this lovely author on Instagram. She actually did the cover for When the King Was Born, and she has done an alternate cover for Everfont that I'm planning on releasing later. But I reached out to her and asked her to do the cover art for There Will Be Thousands. And I asked her if she wanted to do the back cover as well, and she said no. And because I was not planning on publishing this as an indie author, I had submitted it to this other publishing house. I figured, it's fine. Like when I submit this, we can probably deal with the back cover then. And so when found out that they weren't going to be publishing what I previously had under contract, which means that they weren't going to be looking at There Will Be Thousands, which is when I decided to indie publish it. I went through the KDP process, which is where you upload a cover art, you upload the manuscript. And so normally in my process for publishing an indie book is I would order a paperback or a hardcover first, and then read through that with a pen, mark all the places where there are errors and punctuation mistakes, fix the manuscript, and then upload it. Because the turnaround time for There Will Be Thousands from the moment I decided to publish it as an indie author instead of publishing it through a publishing house is the reason why there are so many mistakes. And I'm on the last chapter of the epilogue right now. I would say there are probably between 30 or 40 instances of punctuation errors in the manuscript in total, which not great. I'm not a fan that I missed those. So I'm going to be uploading those changes to Kindle sometime this week, which should auto update on your end as well. And then Farooq, I will also send you a new PDF copy. But when you are working alone, unfortunately, sometimes you do run into those mistakes. I think the best thing that you can do as an author when that happens is to just own up to it. Say, yeah, like I did make these mistakes. I'm sorry to the audience when it happens, but then to offer kind of like I'm going to change this. I'm working on editing errors, and then just kind of move on because it is a fact of life that sometimes mistakes happen. Just be accountable and then fix them is kind of my attitude towards it.
No, no, absolutely. Thank you so much because a lot of people don't know the process of an indie author, the fact that you literally have to do everything yourself. And I think the entire process, very, even if you hire an editor, a freelance editor, that takes a lot of money, as far as I know. So the whole thing is very expensive. Um, so fine, you're taking care of all these issues. What about the next book that you're talking about that's going to come out in October? Is that also something that you edited yourself, or what about that one?
This one has actually been edited by my publishing house. And the way that the process works, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but for the audience, you sign a contract initially. At least this is what happened with my publishing house. And they say, we're going to shoot for this publication date. And then they say, we're going to go through 3 rounds of edits that are content edits. It's making sure characters are consistent, there's no plot holes, and that the story flows essentially. And that if there's any prose issues, you fix it during those edits as well. The secondary edit is the kind of proofreading edit. It's to make sure that any mistakes, like in regards to grammar or punctuation, are fixed. And then the third edit is just a final run through to make sure that everything is done correctly, or like everything, like you're satisfied with the final product. And so from about, I want to say, August to December of 2024 is when we went through those editing process for The Land of the Ill Imagined. And so we completely finished with all of the edits with the proofreading edit. And so it was done in January. And at that point, we should have moved on to cover art. We should have moved on to getting arcs out to reviewers. And I was following up with my publishing house, and I was like, when am I going to get the arc? I should be getting this soon. And they said, we don't have it yet. Just sit tight. And I finally sent them an email, I think in April, and I was like, listen, like, I really need to know this. My book is going to release in 2 months. I need some information. I really need to get this out to ARC reviewers. And they sent out a video recording of like the CEO of the publishing house, because they're a little bit smaller. And he essentially said, we're really struggling with the influx of AI. We don't, it's really disrupted the market, essentially for these smaller publishing houses. And that essentially we're going to put everything on pause for right now. We're just going to rely on our backline. Anybody who currently has a contract, just sit tight. And so I called them and I was like, listen, my book is done proofreading, it's done editing. I just need cover art and a few other things. If I need to put up some of my own capital to push this forward, I will, because I need to get this published. And they said, well, we're not going to have you put any of your own capital forward, but since you're so far along in the process, we can push your book to release. We're just going to have to delay it a few months. And so it is now scheduled for an October release. I do have a lot of faith in my publisher. They're wonderful people. I've loved working with them. I've met them in person at several cons. It's just an unfortunate circumstance of where the market is at right now. But that's kind of the process for traditional publishing. It takes about a year, to be honest, of editing and re-editing and proofreading. But that's often why you see less mistakes in traditionally published novels as compared to indie published novels.
So I'm
Right.
going to jump in with.
Hi, Bo.
Sorry, I'm just going to
Bo.
jump in with a question here because, you've talked about the fact that you have a daytime job and then you've got kids and you've got a family, and this takes a lot of dedication, takes a lot of hard work. You're constantly in touch with your publisher. You're thinking about 3-4 books ahead, and you're also trying to stay on top of the ones that are out there. You need to fix them up and all of this. What's driving you? What's the big aspiration? What's the big goal? Is it to be, is it to be out there mentioned by two guys in Bangladesh on their podcast?
Well,
what's
you
the big
achieved your
dream?
dream.
Yeah.
What's the
Um,
big dream?
so this is going to sound grandiose, but I want to, when I die and after I've been gone a while, I want to be considered among the pantheon of the greatest authors who have lived. So I would like to stand shoulder to shoulder with Tolkien. I'd like to stand shoulder to shoulder with Sanderson, Robert Jordan, many other authors who have lived throughout time. Robert E. Lee, I think that's his name. He wrote the Conan books, and then C.S. Lewis, a few more. And so I would like to be considered part of that pantheon. And I think also a secondary characteristic is when I was a kid, books were always an escape for me. I loved escaping into books. And I've learned quite a few moral lessons, had quite a few changes to my character in books that I've read over time as well. I would like to write things that people can learn from, that impact people the same way that I was impacted as a child. And so I think the world has become increasingly polarized in today's society. You have everybody, like tons of different tribes, people breaking off into like it's my side versus your side. I would just say that everybody, I would like anybody who reads my book to know that like even if I may disagree with you on like certain political issues or certain moral issues or religion, whatever it is, that I hope that you get something out of my book and that you enjoy that. And so I'd say those are my main two motivations: is to join like the pantheon of greatest writers in time, and then to also bring joy to anybody that could read my work.
No, that's the tragedy because all these strife and everything is because certain people in every single country, in every single fucking country, certain people want power, want money, and they create these divides, they create these issues. And the general people are unfortunately too brainwashed to realize these things. Anyway, so that's why we have you, we have your books, and hopefully, in fact, hopefully, now I'm 100% sure you will end up there because I believe in manifesting your destiny. If really think hard, if you really focus, I believe you can manifest what you want. So since you really want this, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. Um, so something you touched upon, you said that your publishing house mentioned the fact that AI is really hurting the business. Can you elaborate what that means? Because we, Farooq and I, we work in the advertising industry, so we are keeping a very close watch on AI and everything that's happening. And we, I know 100%, like Farooq, his company, my company, we are keeping a watch. We're training our own people on how to use these AI tools. We're constantly updating ourselves because for us, this is a boon. Because advertising, traditional advertising, is more or less over, and it's going to be completely over in probably 1.5 years, 2 years. This whole thing is going to change. So for me, I grew up on Isaac Asimov and Knight Rider and all of those things. So I love AI. I love robots. I want to own robots. But I understand that it's bad for writers and whatnot. But what do you specifically mean when you said that your publisher was like being hit by the AI thing? What does that? Can you please explain that?
So, for as far as I understand it, there has been an influx of books onto KDP, particularly. So, a lot of self-published. There are some estimates that 90% of books you find on Amazon are now written by AI and not
Yeah.
by authors, which is an insane statistic to consider when you consider that KDP has been around for 10 plus years. Authors have had 10 plus years to advertise on this site, and now suddenly it has been dwarfed and swallowed by this AI tool. And so I think that right now the industry is struggling with AI because AI can write stuff out. It can also produce ads
Yes.
quicker than traditional publishing and even indie publishing. And I think they don't know how to handle that. They don't know where to put their capital to market. They don't know where to put their how to keep up with it. And I kind of think going from here is, and this is just my opinion, and I'm young and kind of dumb, so take my opinion with a grain of salt. But I think what we're going to see is that you're going to see corporations and maybe some authors take the AI route, and they're going to start churning stuff out that is maybe of middling quality. But that authors who take the time to write and produce, they're kind of going to become artisanal artists. It's very similar to how furniture used to be. It all used to be handcrafted. It used to be masters of the craft, and
Yeah.
now it is mass produced. But you can still buy artisanal tables. You can
Artisanal.
still, yeah. And I think that's kind of where we are headed at the moment. I'm not a super big fan of that. I think it's unfortunate, but um, I think that there are some benefits that AI is going to bring just in general, not even in the writing industry, that probably outweigh these industries that are impacted. Um, but that's
Wow, I
kind of
didn't know
that's.
that. That's
Oh,
just
sorry.
that's insane. I didn't know that 90% estimated 90% of books on KDP. For those who don't know, KDP is Kindle Direct Publishing. So Amazon, the books that are published directly to Amazon Kindle. So estimated 90% of these books are written by AI. I haven't read any, so I don't know. I have no idea. But that's frightening. That's absolutely frightening. Um,
I don't know if you saw on Twitter recently there was an author, I can't remember her name, but she left an AI prompt in her book. So it was like holy smokes. Cuz the prompt was like, make this passage sound like this specific author, and it was like ChatGPT was like, I made it sound like this, and it's like, oh.
but she that author came back later, and she kind of like, oh, that wasn't me. That was somebody else who was editing my book. They used AI. I never used AI, so I don't know what's going on. Anyway, it's
Yeah.
very very sad.
Yeah, I think the way moving forward to kind of overcome that is I think authors meeting with their audience, podcasters, the general cons, so that the audience can have general trust in their authors, that it's not being written by AI. And I also think that a lot of the general audience may or may not care that it's written by AI. A lot of them will be like, well, I just want to read something that is enjoyable and has some emotion to it and has some good themes. And if AI can produce that, I don't think it will much matter to the general audience, which I think is also a shame. But I think that's kind of where we're at right now. Um, I don't. know if you've seen on Twitter, there's all these people, whenever a claim is produced, it's essentially somebody in the comments will say, "Hey, Grok," which is Twitter's version of AI, "is this
Yeah.
true?" Um, and I think what we are doing with that is that we are kind of training people not to really think and find for themselves. And I think within a few years, we're going to have a lot of people that just are unable to research and discern
Yeah,
truth without AIs.
yeah,
Um, and Brandon Sanderson's quote in the Stormlight Archive, "Journey before destination," I think that's more than just like this theme that he repeats. I think there's something to be gained from struggling for knowledge, from not just skipping to the outcome that AI may produce. And I think a lot of people are going to lose out on that in the coming years.
Yeah.
absolutely.
I think everything that Asimov put forth in his, I don't know if you've read Asimov, if you're a fan, but I continuously tell my people, tell my friends that basically in the 1930s and 40s, everything Asimov wrote down in his sci-fi books are all coming true. All of it. Everything's coming true. He was really a futurian. He could predict the future. So I think you're absolutely correct that there will come a time where people won't care because, as you said, I want to read something and feel something. As long as I feel something, I won't care who wrote it. So I totally get you. That's very sad. It's already happening in music. Like Spotify, there's a lot of AI music in Spotify. There's a lot of AI music in YouTube. Uh, so it's happening. It's gonna happen in films as well. And I can't really even see the problem is that I can't even get mad at people who are making AI and all of that because for every 10 films that I see out of Hollywood or 10 series that I see, 8 are crap. So 10 of them are made by human beings, 8 of them are crap, and that's how it's been for the last like 50, 60 years. So I'm like, okay, fine, maybe it is time for AI. Maybe they will do something better. I don't know. So it's all very interesting, and we'll find out. Farooq
Yeah.
Kishwabi?
No, no, I think it's a worthwhile discussion, and I really feel bad for talented young authors like you who are fighting to make it. And when you guys have this incredible amount of talent and your storytelling skills, I don't think that AI in any capacity is going to be close enough to match what you guys are providing. You're right; it's that artisanal skill that someday is if it ever gets down to that, you guys hopefully will still be there. And but it's the sad truth. It's just been everyone's going towards convenience, and I think AI just gives us that amount of convenience. And someday we're going to find out that the convenience has kind of taken away the magic that was there in the process. So I feel bad about you guys, and I wish there was something that a whole bunch of us could do to kind of change things around. But we're all part of the process that's pushing the
Yeah.
AI industry. So, but
No, I don't feel bad for talented people. I think Alex is a extremely, extremely talented writer. So I think talented people are going to be fine. This is what
true,
life is. You
true.
got to adapt. You got to
Yeah.
move. You got to pivot. You have to do that. So I don't feel bad for people like Alex, and people who are not as talented as Alex. I don't give a shit. So it doesn't matter. So
Well,
moving on from this. So I mentioned Isaac Asimov. So growing up, did you read a lot of sci-fi, or was it just fantasy? And because you mentioned Glenn Cook, you mentioned another children's author. So was it just fantasy that drew you, or were you also a fan of mystery stories like Agatha Christie? Because one thing I really enjoyed about your book is, for example, when you read Sherlock Holmes or when you read Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot, whatever she wrote, so they're my favorite kind of, like, their style is my favorite because they keep leading, dropping these breadcrumbs, which when you finish the book, you can put it all together in a string. And then you're like, oh, so that's how it happened. Versus there are a lot of other writers, thriller writers or mystery writers, who keep everything dark and secret and they just dump everything on you at the end. So that's not my favorite kind of storytelling. My favorite kind is when you keep teasing, giving little bits of information, and then when you finish the book, everything comes together very nicely. So, were you a fan of Agatha Christie, Alistair MacLean, Sherlock Holmes, Isaac Asimov? Can you talk about that, please?
so I didn't read most of those when I was a kid, but I've started making my way through them in my adult life. Agatha Christie, in particular, my dad loved Agatha Christie. He loved Nero Wolfe as well, and he loved.
Oh yeah, amazing.
Yeah, yep. And so he loves Sherlock Holmes too. And so I they're on my list to read. But I would agree. I think that the best mysteries, written movies or otherwise, are the ones that leave breadcrumbs, so that the audience may be able to guess what's happening beforehand. I think there's been this general push in media that it's like, oh, your plot twist has to be unguessable. It has to be like nobody can see it coming, and I don't think that's fair to the audience. I think that it it is rewarding to people that can see it coming, and for people that can't see it coming, it's rewarding to go back and read the book and see, oh, this is where this was foreshadowed. I think foreshadowing is one of the most powerful tools a writer can use to make a book enjoyable. A really good example, one of my favorites, is J.K. Rowling's The Goblet of Fire, or
Oh
Harry
yeah.
Potter. And if you haven't read it by now, sorry, here's some spoilers. But Rita Skeeter is a animagus in that book, and she can turn into a beetle. And so all throughout the book, there's this beetle that is mentioned throughout the book, and Harry and Hermione and Ron are just blown away and flabbergasted by, how is Rita Skeeter listening to our private conversations? How is she getting these scoops? And at the very end, Hermione figures it out, and it's a very minor detail of the book, but it was foreshadowed perfectly. And I think that's something that J.K. Rowling does really well
Yeah.
throughout each of the individual books, is that she is fantastic at foreshadowing. And I think that Brandon Sanderson does that in the Mistborn series too. He does it in his Stormlight Archive, and I think that's what kind of puts them a cut above other authors in the industry.
So have you read Tress of the Emerald Sea, one of his secret projects?
I have, yeah. I
I
love
loved it.
Tress. It was
Loved it.
great. It was fantastic.
So good.
I did see the plot twist coming at the end. I think you know
Oh
the one I'm talking
yeah.
about,
Okay.
but I still found it enjoyable because it was like, I even though like I knew it was coming, I was like I figured it out early on in the book, and so I was like, this is a nice little reward for me, I guess. So
I didn't figure it out, and I loved it. It was so good. I'm not very good at figuring things out in books, so I loved it. It was fantastic. Farooq, it's a short book, Tress of the Emerald Sea. So try to get that. It's
Yeah.
really nice. So uh, we we've crossed into 1 hour 16 minutes. So can you give us a little time so that we go through our comments, and then we're gonna
yeah,
let you
for
go.
sure.
So
Awesome.
let's look at what we have here. TJ Edwards is here. Good luck, Alex. So is somebody you know?
That is, yeah. He's a friend online. I've never met him in person, but really great guy. I enjoy
Fantastic.
him.
So Brandon Clark is here from X. I love seeing comments from X. Alexander Rob, yes, high five, fantastic. Kaiser Kabir, he's a book lover, booktuber from Bangladesh. He has his own anime show about manga and anime. So I've said it once, I'm saying it again. Shakib Bhai is already one of the biggest rock stars in the country. Now he's becoming an international book reviewer. I'm not liking that he's becoming too powerful. All right, Kaiser, shut up, shut up and read. Kaiser continues. Reading There Will Be Thousands, already 25% in. Very interesting so far. Fantastic. Um,
Well, I hope you
Happiness,
enjoy it. So,
I'm sure he'll enjoy
uh,
it. He loves great books. Happiness 97 says, I love Alex's books. Big time fan. I plan on having his baby one day. Wow. I'm
All
pretty
right.
sure
I
that's
think
not your
you.
Is
wife.
that your wife?
No, it is not.
Okay.
I think you can probably skip all of Happiness 97's comments. I've kind of been glancing at them throughout the stream.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
I'm pretty sure this is somebody I know that's just like trolling. But I'm not
Okay.
positive.
All right. Okay.
So,
Actually, no, the ones that I'm seeing now, they're pretty harmless. Anyway, Kaiser Kabir is saying fourth book and then there were none. Acha, ठीक है, sir. That's an Agatha Christie joke. Good one. Glenn Cook can cook. Yes, he can. Acha, happens. Everfont's world of great feels raw and desolate. What inspired his creation, and did you draw from any real world locations or any historical thing? That's a legit question.
um, for Everfont, I wouldn't say that I drew on. I think like Star Wars is probably the closest inspiration because you have Luke Skywalker on Tatooine, and the world of Grit is also a desert world. I actually saw Dune because I hadn't read Dune before I wrote Everfont, and saw the movie after I published it, like 2 or 3 years after Everfont came out. The movie was released. I was like, oh shoot, people are going to compare this to Dune. Because in Everfont, instead of worms, you have these things called sand gators, and they're these legless gators that can like swim through the sand essentially. And one of the reasons that Ryan can't cross the desert is because she has to hire a sand sailor to take her across, otherwise they'll be eaten by these sand gators. And so I would say Tatooine is probably the biggest inspiration. I also, for Everfont, I wanted to write a simpler story because before, like I mentioned, my first book that I wrote, 200,000 words of just slop. And so I was trying to keep it more condensed and kind of try to keep it more character focused.
Fantastic. Happiness continues. The title evokes a sense of myth and prophecy. Was your portrayal of the king meant to parallel any specific historical or any literary figures?
I think that Anakin Skywalker is the closest parallel to the
Oh.
king. I opposite Redemption. I also love a character who is not the main character, but one that started out good and is slowly corrupted. I don't think they're very fun to follow in books because they just end up being depressing. Which is why in When the King Was Born, I have a cast to kind of supplement his descent. But I think that Anakin Skywalker is probably my closest. I think it's tragic that the prequels of Star Wars, for lack of a better word, were executed so poorly. Because I think Anakin Skywalker, like, there's so much potential there. There's so much potential in Star Wars, and I love the prequels. But Revenge of the Sith is probably the only one out of them that could stand on its own.
Yeah, tragedy. It's a real tragedy. Um,
Um,
Navigating the Thoughtscape says, Alex Robb, he's the man, my new favorite author.
oh, well, thank
Fantastic.
you.
Riff Lab is saying, I love Everfont, honestly. And he continues, looking forward to seeing Alex continuing to produce content. He's gifted. It's great. Continues, can't wait for October. Neither can I. That's fantastic. Ichabod Thornton says, good stuff. Kaisa Kabir continues, question for Alex. Do you plan on becoming a fantasy writer through and through, or do you write about other genres and why?
I This is kind of a side goal of mine, but I would like to write a bestseller in almost every genre. So I'd like to write one in historical fiction, like kind of like the broad genres. Historical fiction, like to write one in romance, mystery, horror. I probably won't touch erotica or something like that, but I'd like to do some children's books as well. So I would like to branch out. Something that is kind of frustrating for me is when authors pigeonhole themselves into one specific genre, and it's good for marketing because audiences know exactly what they're going to get. I don't plan on doing that. I plan on writing sci-fi, fantasy, a whole bunch of different things.
So, have you read any Discworld novels by Terry Pratchett?
Uh, I did. I read the first one. I really enjoyed it. I loved the dry humor. I am kind of on the fence about his main character because his main character is not heroic in that one. He just kind of stumbles into things, and so that was my only complaint about it. But the world building was fantastic. The characters were fantastic. I plan on reading more in Terry Pratchett's Discworld.
No, I'm sorry you read the one that you read because when I find out somebody hasn't read Terry Pratchett, I tell them skip the first three, start with book four. So one reason
Okay.
is none of his books are directly related. They're all in the same universe, and there are some continuations, but you don't need to read them in order. So the character that's there in the first three books, I think Terry Pratchett himself was figuring out like what he was trying to write. So he started off writing straight out parodies. Like it was straight out parodies. Everything is funny, everything is silly. And then by the
Yeah.
fourth book, which is called Mort, and the story is insane. Basically, Death is a character in Terry Pratchett's books. So Death decides to take an apprentice, and that apprentice is called a little boy called Mort. That's the story. So
Okay.
from there, he kind of started shifting into okay, fine. I'm not just doing parodies. This is not just a sarcastic treatise on the world. This is something deeper, something bigger.
Mm.
So from Mort, it really takes a whole different shape, and the stories I think which elevates the story. So I would recommend do not read The Adventures of Rinswald, the librarian or whatever, the professor. You don't need to read them. Straight out, jump to Mort, and then of course everybody's favorite book is Guards. I think that's the seventh book or the eighth book. That's when I think Guards is where he finally got the complete idea of what he's trying to do. So it takes him
Okay.
from Mort another two, three books to reach that level. Okay, fine. This is what I'm gonna do. And Guards, the character in Guards, they're basically you could say they're the central heart of the entire Discworld. They pop up here and there in every other book. And amazing, amazing. So I would recommend you skip the other book two and three, and you straight away go to book four. It's a very, very different experience. I would recommend that.
All right. Awesome. So
Um,
we'll go ahead and do
okay.
that.
Hello. Jidan is saying, ব্রো আরসিবি এর খেলা দেখতে দেখতে আচ্ছা he's talking about
Okay, so
cricket.
he's talking about IPL.
আইপিএল দিয়ে চলে আসলাম সাকিব ভাই ওয়াচিং দিস কমেন্ট প্লিজ চিটাঙ্গের ইভেন্টের একটা টিকিট ম্যাচ করে টাকা নাই ব্রো আই হ্যাভ দ্য পারফেক্ট সলিউশন ফর ইউ তোমার যদি টাকা ইফ ইউ ডোন্ট হ্যাভ মানি দেন ডোন্ট কাম টু দ্য শো দ্যাটস দ্য বেস্ট সলিউশন happiness 97 continues. Alexander Robb is probably my number one or number two favorite fiction author of all time. I would say my number one fiction author of all time was probably Joseph Smith. I have not read any
So
Joseph Smith.
this is a joke. Joseph Smith founded the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints in America.
Okay.
Colloquially, they are known as Mormons,
Oh,
and this is the religion that I belong to. So it's that I read that one and I was like, this guy is probably one of my friends. I'm trying to troll the chat. Um, so,
uh,
but awesome.
okay. So happiness continues. As far as ethnicity, I got the vibe of black. I didn't even think about it. And then he says, he or she, I'm Jaina, probably he. Tell Alex he should get into those steamy romance novels. My wife loves those. Reads them like crazy. Yeah, those people sell a lot, I'm guessing.
They
Romance
do.
novels.
They do. I think I could write them. I have no interest in writing them. I've read a few and very very not my style, not my speed.
Uh, this is my friend of the show, friend of me, friend of Farooq, Ines Zakir. So it's so cool that you're getting all these authors on the show. Only a few years ago, who would have thought that we would see something like this? Kudos. Thanks a lot, Dosto. Thanks a lot, friend. Uh, glad that you're watching. Jannatul Mafi. So this guy, Jannatul Mafi, Alex, he reads like crazy, and we have very similar taste in books. And he keeps recommending me books that he reads. So he's my personal book recommender. So very, very important person to the show. So Mafi says,
Awesome.
gotta read There Will Be Thousands. Already bought it. Fantastic. There you go. One sale guaranteed from this show.
Yeah, thank you very much, Janitul. Am I pronouncing
Yeah,
that right? Or
yeah.
awesome,
Jannatul Mafi. Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you, Janitul. I appreciate that.
All right, so Kaiser says, question for Alex. If you could cast Shakib and Farooq on a live action film, TV show version of There Will Be Thousands, which characters would they fit the best? It's clearly I'm the spider. Yeah, that's a good question, Alex. Where
well,
would you
well,
cast us in There Will Be Thousands?
Shakib, I think you would be Chief. You kind of give me
Yes.
the Chief vibe. Farouk, I think you would be Scrade. I think I would cast you as either. I think I would cast you as Scrade or one of the bandits. But I don't want to cast you as one of the bandits because they die early on. So I've got to pick Scrade. So,
That's very generous of you. I think that's perfect. Perfect casting. Love it. Okay, so Ines was saying, "Don't give stuff away, Farooq." Yeah, even I got a little worried, Farooq. Somewhere along the way, you were saying too
Irish,
much,
trust me.
but you
Irish,
controlled
trust me.
yourself.
This
Good.
this is a book you have to pick up and start reading. Remember, we had a conversation a couple of days ago, and you were asking me. I think you put it. Was it as is this book as good as the Great Coats? So this one is absolutely right up there with all the great novels that we've read, all the great stories we've read. So pick this one up. There will be thousands.
So Ines
awesome.
loves this particular character, Glotka. I think he's a character from Joe Abercrombie's First Law trilogy. So I don't
Okay.
know, Alex, if you've read the First Law. Have you? The trilogy?
No, I have not. It's on my list. I get it confused with another book because there's a book of a similar name that is just absolutely atrocious. And I only recently learned that they were two separate books, and so because I had been avoiding it previously, I think it's like Magician's. I've got to look it up, but it's like Magician's Seventh Law or something like that. And
Okay.
so I thought they were the same, and I only recently learned they were different. So I have not read that one yet.
So I've read the First Law trilogy, and as I told you before, I'm not a fan of grimdark, and I didn't enjoy those books at all, and I didn't enjoy them to an extent that I have no memory of anything that happened in the book. I just remember Glotka because he's a priest who's a torturer, and I remember having a lot of discussion about this character with my friends, with Irashus also. That's the only reason why I remember Glotka, but I don't remember anything that happened in those three books. Nothing. It's a
Okay.
blank. Mafi continues. Alex, can you share a moment from your personal life that inspired a scene or character in the book, and what are the unexpected challenges you encountered during writing a book? That's interesting. Unexpected challenges and inspiration from real life.
So this is probably gonna get a little bit personal. I hope it's not uncomfortable. But when I was 17, I actually attempted suicide.
Oh, I
And I
did.
ended up, yeah, I ended up in a rehab facility, and I was just convinced that I could not change and that I was going to be stuck where I was in my character forever. And it was there that I kind of turned to God, which is my faith is a big part of my life. And it was there that I really was like, I want to change. And so Sitter for me is a very personal character because I'm of the opinion that I'm not that great of a person. I'm trying to be better. And Sitter's attempt to be better is kind of mirrors some things that I have had happen in my life. And I wouldn't say that we're analogous one to one. And I would say that I am very unlike Sitter, but kind of the same journey in that he has felt trapped and he feels trapped and he doesn't feel like there's a way out. I have felt very similarly to that, and I feel like I probably drew on that while writing this book. Maybe not consciously. I didn't write Sitter as a oh, this is what I would be if I was a fantasy character, but I know how Sitter feels in some instances. So
Wow.
um,
That's thank you for sharing. That's
yeah,
amazing.
for sure.
Um,
Thank you.
Brandon Clark says, aspiring author on his way to become among the pantheon of greatest authors and bring joy to those who read. Yes, that's something we can all get behind. Brock Schneider says, Alex as a person and author is a hard worker and I respect his grind. I wish to be as talented and successful in what I do like Alex is. Alex, what is your motivation?
Awesome. I think we kind of covered that a little bit earlier,
Yeah,
but Brandon Clark's comment summed it up: is that I want to be considered among the greatest writers, and I want to bring joy to those who read. So those are my main two motivations.
fantastic. That there we have it. We finished our comment section, so we can officially let you go now. Unless Farouk, you have something more to say, or Brandon, if you want to say something. Uh,
Um,
any last thoughts?
Brandon, yeah, we'd love to hear
Alex,
your last thoughts
Brandon,
before we
keep on
jump in.
saying Alex,
Ah,
Alex, not Brandon. What am I
Alex,
saying?
thank
No
you, thank
worries.
you.
So I
Well,
just want to point out something, Alex, before you say anything. I'm sure you've noticed how Farouk and I openly gushed about your book in front of you. So there's a reason why we're doing that. It's not just because we loved your book. It's not just because it's an amazing book. Because I remember when I first read Harry Potter. By the time I got into the Harry Potter series, I'm talking about uh, early 2000s. It was 2002 or 2003. By that time, already four books had come out. So she was already a sensation. J.K. Rowling was a sensation throughout the world. And I remember picking up the first book, reading it, absolutely loving the first book, going on to the others, loving all the books. And then I remember turning the book over and looking at those little, those editorial blurbs that the
yeah,
critics have. So they were so bland. They were so typical. You pick up any book from any market, any shelf, and you'll find the same. It's just like the copy pasted, wonderful read for children, a new voice, but but it's so boring. And I remember like, are we? I remember thinking back then that are we reading the same book? These so-called critics who did these blurbs, but I would have written something much more effusive, much more enthusiastic. I would have tried to capture the magic of the book in that little blurb versus the so-called critics. So, which is why I've taken it upon myself that when we bring authors onto this show, that we really want to make it clear how much we appreciate what you're doing by gushing because that's what you deserve. So that's why we gush. It's not just because it's a great book and whatnot. There's a reason behind it. So I just want to make it clear.
Well,
Yeah.
I really appreciate that, and I honestly I was blown away by your guys' review, because the book that you were reviewing, I felt like you gave an honest but a blunt review. I think you gave her 3 or 2 stars, and so
Too.
I was hoping 2 stars. Yeah, I was hoping for a 4 at most. I was like, I'm reasonably certain I can get a 4. And when you gave me 5, I was just so grateful, so thankful. I'm really glad that you guys enjoyed the book as much as you have, because that's one of the reasons that I write is for people to enjoy them. So thank you so much. I did want to offer, because you guys don't have KDP in Bangladesh. If somebody is interested in this book and they don't have the means to get it, you guys are free to share that with them, the EPUB file or the PDF. Um, I like to get paid for my work, but right now it's not available in Bangladesh. So if somebody
So
would like it,
I've got a brilliant idea, Alex. I've shared it with
yeah,
JCM Byrne, but he didn't reply to me because we're talking about a lot of things. There's something he just ignored. Basically, he's I think published hardcover copies of his books, the Hybrid Helix series. So I was telling him, Joe, I've got a brilliant idea. So you ship these books to my friend who lives in Buffalo, New York, and I'm gonna pay you by buying you Amazon gift card. Very simple. I can do that. I can buy Amazon gift card and give it to you. So he kind of ignored it, and we talked about everything else. We talked about my friend's address, and then he mentioned that he used to live in Buffalo. There was a lot of talk, but he refused to talk about the gift card thing. I hope he's not giving those books to me for free. But anyway, so I was saying, so I can easily, like, I know 2 3 people in Bangladesh who would love to read this book. So what I can do is I can actually like tell you that okay, these are the 3 people who want to read your book, and I can pay you through. Of course, they'll pay me as well. They pay me in the local currency, and I can pay you by gifting you an Amazon gift card, which is not a gift; it'll be the payment for the book. If that works for
yeah.
you, then I can actually freely offer your book to a lot of people in Dhaka. So you get paid, we get the book. It works. I don't know if it does that work for you.
Yeah, I think we'll probably have to discuss the details off stream, but I would
Sure.
love to. I'd love to provide that opportunity. And mainly it's just because like you guys don't have KDP. KDP is
No.
the most accessible, and so I just like anybody who would like to have that opportunity to read. I'd love to provide them with that
So,
opportunity.
so Alex, the way Shakib and I were discussing about this earlier is when he was telling me that that we might have Alexander Robb on our show. And sorry, it's nearly 12, so sorry about getting your name messed up a couple of
No
minutes ago.
worries.
But when Shakib and I were talking about this, and he was like, this guy's coming in, and I've got his book, but you know what? We're going to try and send you an EPUB. So I try the EPUB, doesn't work, and I call him in the. I think it was like at 2 at night or something. It was it was really late at night, and he's like, "Yeah, we'll talk to him, but these guys are really fabulous. I'm sure he's going to help us get the books." And I was kind of like, you know what? We're a small show. We're basically based in Bangladesh. I'm not really sure if he's going to step out and do this stuff. And then, early morning, which is probably late night your time, Shakib messaged me saying, yeah, he sent the PDF, and if it doesn't work, then he'll figure something else out. But he's trying everything so that you can get the book. And I'm so thankful, and I'm so touched by the fact that you offered for us to share the book with the other book lovers here in this part of the world, just because just because the system doesn't exist. But it just shows that there's this thing that Shakib keeps on saying on the shows that if your intention is right, then the end result is bound to be good. And it just comes across that you're one of those well-intentioned people, human beings. You're all about spreading your books out there. You're trying to spread this joy to all the readers out there. And thank you so much. And once again, this is not gushing. Truly, truly, it means a lot. It means a lot that you took your time out to spend time with us. It means a lot that you went through all those things to get me your book. And it means a lot that you just made this offer so that we can share your book. Hopefully, we'll figure out some way that you don't have to give all your talent away. But thank you so much, and I am really looking forward to reading the next couple of books that come out in at least this series. because I'm fascinated with this book, and I really hope that you go faster around on the turnaround time. We don't have to wait till October for you to show us what's coming up next, and I hope it's not the next 2-3 years of it. Because one of the things I hate about all these other wonderful authors, Patrick Rothfuss and George R. R. Martin, is they've kind of left me hanging in there. I've finished a number of books, and they're just like, yeah, we're coming out with the next one, and that was like 10 years ago, and they still haven't gotten there. So I'm really hoping that you bring it through for all of us, and thank you so much once again. Shakib.
No, I just want to say that George R. R. Martin is not finishing a series because where he left off book five, I can't imagine he can finish the story in two books. I think Daenerys is still a little kid. The dragons are this much, this big. So I don't know how he's going to finish the whole thing in like one book or two books. I don't know how this is going to happen. And I think Patrick Rothfuss has, I think he said that I'm never writing the sequel or something. I don't know. So
Yeah.
let's forget about
He
those people.
Uh,
Yeah.
very
Sorry.
very similar problem with Patrick Rothfuss is
Yeah.
he can't finish the
yeah.
series in one book. And
Yeah. I don't think
I
he can finish.
yeah, I'm never gonna leave unless I die. I'm never gonna leave a series unfinished. That is another big sticking point to me, is because I feel like, and other authors may not feel this way, and this is just my personal feeling. I feel like I owe it to people who have invested time and their own money into reading my stuff that I should finish the series that I start. And so I'm never going to release one that I don't have an intention on finishing, unless I,
Thank you.
of course,
No,
unless
I'm
I
glad.
die. So
I'm glad that you feel that way because uh, people sometimes don't realize that when somebody buys a book, it's not just I'm spending X amount of dollars to buy a product. Then we spend hours, literally hours of our lives, very intimately with the characters of that book and with that author, right? The writing of the author. So it's a very intimate connection. And then when you have a situation like George R. R. Martin or Patrick Rothfuss, they're like they don't give a shit. They're out there enjoying life, doing conventions and writing TV shows and whatnot. Where's the book? Oh, it's gonna come. Uh, I don't know. Maybe they're just thinking that Brandon Sanderson will take pity on them and finish the series for them. We don't know. So,
he'd
that guy
probably
is one prolific guy. Yeah, please.
he'd finish it within a year. He'd be done with both of them within a year. So,
Yeah, I think you take at least three books for the Song of Ice and Fire, and Patrick Rothfuss one more book. Yeah, he'd do it in 1 year because he's done that right during the pandemic. He wrote four books in 1 year, so he'd probably
yep.
do that. He's too good. He's amazing. Love that guy. So sorry, before we let you go, so we had Devin Erickson here a few weeks back. So I don't know if you've read his book. I strongly recommend his book. It's just one book he's written. The first one. It's called The Theft of Fire. It's insanely good. It's insanely good. It's very very classic sci-fi. What do I mean by that? It's something. It's got something similar to your book. It's like a very contained small story which hints at larger things. So very similar to in structure to what you wrote, but of course very very different. So he's an amazing. So he was saying that he's a big fan of Brandon Sanderson, not because just he's a writer, but apparently he learned a lot from Sanderson's videos on how to write and all those things. So this brings me to something else. Sanderson has made a complete industry of himself. Like he's become a full-fledged company, and he's got his own advertising, his own events wing, etc., etc. Is that something that you are learning or noticing or taking stock of? That's where maybe you want to go starting now. Is that something you're thinking? I'm talking about the whole
Um,
setup that is created.
I think I would, but I think Sanderson had an advantage that most authors don't get, is that he was able to finish Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series, and that catapulted his career probably 10, 20 years. Like a phenomenal opportunity for him. And I think he has capitalized that on that success. He is phenomenal business acumen, just very good at marketing, very good at making a brand of himself. And I feel like that's something that other authors struggle to do. I feel like the only other author that is probably comparable, or maybe two, are J.K. Rowling and George R. R. Martin. George R. R. Martin with his Song of Ice and Fire, and J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter. I think those are the three authors that if you were to mention their names in the fantasy community, everybody would know who they are. And there's a few others that are pretty close, but just they're not the titans that those three are. And so I would like to have that happen. To me, I don't think it's really like I would do everything. I'm going to do everything that I can to possibly make it happen. I don't think that it's something that you can force. I think it's organic or it's not. And so if I fail at it, well, at least I tried. But if I succeed, then I'd love to succeed, essentially. So, but Martin was a D-list author for quite a long time, and I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that he had a dedicated fan base that loved his books, and he was very good at writing. And as soon as he released Game of Thrones and the TV show came out, his popularity skyrocketed to that of A-lister. And it probably would have been something similar with Sanderson. Is that Elantris and Mistborn were very popular. They had their dedicated fan bases,
Yeah.
and then he got into Wheel of Time, and he suddenly shot up to A-lister. I think J.K. Rowling is just this amazing anomaly. Who she was super popular. She hit right at the right time in the market. The Scholastic book space was kind of bloated. Harry Potter was different. It was enjoyable for both kids and adults, and it also rose with the audience, which is something
Yeah.
that has not been done as successfully as she was able to do. But I'd love to become like them. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, great. So I can't end this show before giving a shout out to JCM Byrne. He's the reason why people like you are coming to the show. He's the first one who agreed to come to this show. So thanks, Joe. Every single show that I have a guest writer from abroad, I'm gonna thank you. He's an amazing writer, JCM Byrne. You guys should check him out. He's the writer of the Wistful Ascending book and the series, and of course, Alexander Robb, the author of There Will Be Thousands. Let's take a look at his book cover for 1 second. There we go. There will be thousands. It's an amazing book. Anybody who's into great stories, anybody who's into great fantasy stories, anybody who's into human drama, this is the book for you. It's wonderfully written. The quality of prose, I cannot. Farooq and I have been gushing over it the whole show. The quality of prose is really on another level. This is not an average book. It's a fantastically written book. So highly recommended. If you're somebody not living in Bangladesh, go get it in Kindle, or you can order it the paperback as well. As far as I know, this is amazing. So, Alex, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming to the show. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Wishing you all the best, and keep writing, and we'll keep reading.
Thank you, and thank you for guys for making the time. I really appreciate you guys inviting me on the show, and I hope that what I write, you guys will enjoy in the future.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you. We
definitely
will.
gonna
We
read. I'm
definitely
gonna
will.
read everything you write, and we want you back when you bring out your next book. So
Awesome.
please come back.
I would love to come back. This has been awesome. So
Okay, have you watched Thunderbolts?
no, so I'm waiting for it to come out on Disney Plus. Because we've got 3 kids, it's sometimes hard to get date night going with my wife. I don't think it's really appropriate for them. So we're because they're young. My oldest is 6, and so we are definitely going to watch it. Though I've heard it's better than a lot of the other MCU movies that have come out
It's really good.
recently.
It's really good.
So
It's
awesome.
really good. So they're kind of back on track. So it's really good. And wait for the second post credit scene. That's fantastic.
Okay, awesome.
Pardon the pardon the pun. Um,
I have heard of that. It's when the Fantastic Four show up. So I love that.
yeah. So anyway,
So
guys, thank you so much for everybody who's been watching us live, and thank you everybody who's going to watch it later on YouTube. So it's been wonderful to have you here, Alexander Robb. Keep writing, and we'll catch you in the books later. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
yeah. Have a good one.
Thanks, Alex.
See you.
Bye.
See you.